Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars with my good friend Dan Mondello. Now, don't worry. I mean, it's always been car people, car people, car people. Dan is not in the car business, although when he entered this Zoom type meeting, he did put his name in as Dan Knight Rider Mondello. And it's funny, I always try to wear a different T-shirt on each one. It's getting a little expensive. We're doing one a week. And I am hitting an average of $13, $14 a shirt. So it starts adding up in a year, especially those of you at the Northeastern Thrift. So I thought about it too late to try to order it in a day or two, but I didn't know if I should get a Nicolas Cage or a Trans Ams Screaming Chicken. That would have been so awesome if you would have logged on and I had that on.
You know, it's really funny because I came like this close to wearing the Nicolas Cage sweatshirt, but I also came this close to wearing a full-fledged lobster costume as well. Because yes, I do have one, but I chose just to come on here wearing a T-shirt. It really goes the right attire. You're wearing a T-shirt, a nicer T-shirt than mine, but a T-shirt nonetheless.
Nonetheless, I mean this is heavy-duty apparel down here in Clearwater, Florida. What can I tell you? So my son, the one we were just talking about, Jackson 18, does have a Trans Am. I'm pretty sure the one I wore when the car was out mid-late 70s. But the black and white with the chicken or whatever, with the Trans Am written underneath and the blue white T-shirt with the dark blue piping around the sleeve and around the neck. I mean, like how they were. If I would have thought of that, except my son, he has a deal. Anytime I buy him a new T-shirt or new light-colored shorts, that's what he wears to take the heads off of his 71 Ford truck with.
That's exactly right. He's doing it right then. That's exactly how you're supposed to do it, you know. New collared shirt, wrench. They just go so well together.
Right, and on the first wearing, I remember I bought him a new dark-colored some kind of sweatshirt, and at the time he had a 22-foot Catalina anchored off behind the house. And he comes in and the shirt looks like, I don't know, like like salt from an up north road was splattered all over him. But it turned out that he took the lawn spritzer, you know, the thing that you pump up to get rid of the weeds or whatever, filled it with bleach to get rid of mold inside of the ceiling of the sailboat, wearing the brand new dark whatever color sweatshirt, like hoodie.
You're only young once, man. You got to destroy some clothes during your lifetime. But I got to tell you, man, I'm liking his outfit. I'm liking his attire, and I'm liking his lack of like consideration for, you know, what they look like after the first wearing, as you said. No, that's good stuff. He's definitely doing it right, and it's good to hear your boy wrenches, man. Because a lot of kids these days, they stare at phones all day long. They're like us, but smaller and younger. I'm glad to hear he's wrenched. I'm glad to hear he's ripping the heads off of that 460 Ford or whatever you said earlier. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. That's great stuff.
It's a 360, but he always makes sure that everyone knows it's the same block as the 390.
Ah, yes, it is. He's 100% correct, too. Yeah.
The FE, you know. So I'm sure that he'll do everything that it takes to push it out. The good news is there's plenty of metal in the motor, so he can bore it out and do whatever, and, you know, you can take it out. You could take it out to 390 or more, I'm sure, no problem. So it's funny what you say about kids on their phone and wrenching on car. I mean, the thing I really appreciate, and I love both my sons, of course, but I just like one better. I mean, what can I tell you? But the thing that I really do appreciate about Jackson and the way he lives his life intentionally, he finally did get an iPhone. But for the longest time, he had not quite an analog phone, but a phone with no screen. And until like a year and a half ago. And it was with all the rivet. I mean, we found it used like a museum piece on eBay, and he wanted to have it. Had like the screws all around, the rubber gasket, it would bounce off of stuff. Had his Moroso sticker on the back. And when his friends would make fun of him because he had this like really weird phone, he's like, it's a phone. You're supposed to make calls with it. That's what it is. It's a phone, you know, like he's 62. I loved it, you know. So, but he really is an analog kind of guy. So and finally, I'll get off of him. And of course, I love my kids. I could talk about them all day. But Jackson applied at the marina to be a dock boy when he was 12 or 13. And it was the job that I wanted when my dad kept his boat at that very same marina. And I didn't apply and get turned down. I just never applied for whatever dishwashing job at the restaurant I got nearer to the house. But this was the job I always wanted, because when we'd pull up on the boat, these are the kids that would be like, wapa, with the line like from 10 feet away doing the knot on the cleat on the dock. And of course, talking to everyone's daughters, pulling up to get gas and all of that stuff. But you're at a marina all day. Like, how bad could it be?
It sounds like heaven, really. I mean,
right. So they call me from the marina and they says, listen, we have your son here. He's applying. And I'm like, why would they call me? Like, do you need permission that he should apply, or what's going on? No, he's younger than our rules to hire. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, when should he apply again? They said, no, if it's all right with you, we're going to look up the child labor rules and hire him. Because when we told him that he was too young, come back next year, he sat down and plopped down and started talking to one of our mechanics who's like 75 about what flathead engine was in what year Ford and Mercury.
I love it.
And bench racing with the guy.
I love it.
So anyway, that is rare today. That is. I think there's not a lot of
No, it's totally rare today. I remember when I was in college, I got myself a job at a Corvette restoration place called Ron's Auto Restoration. And, very quickly, the mechanics and the shop owner, Ron Bunnell, learned that I was not cut out to paint anything, sandblast anything, put anything together, take anything apart. So eventually he just ended up letting me paint the shop. And for the next 4 years, I painted the shop different colors. And, he was a really great boss.
Perfect. No, I can only not paint a car. I definitely can't paint a shop either. I actually remember buying 2 gallons of paint and painting a room, and there was thin spots all over the place. You could see through it. So then I had to hire a real painter because it was terrible. And he says, okay, how big's the room? And I told him, he's okay, so that'll take 1 gallon. So I took 2 gallons and still had all the thin spots. Yeah. So I'm looking at my notes here. So I know you were car crazy at a young age. So, we are a little bit about connections through cars, but we could talk about anything. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this is one that a lot of people who I tell know this about me. My first word was not actually mama or dada or any kind of variation of those. It was actually vehicle. And I was saying vehicle because I was an infant, but I was meaning to say vehicle. And my mother used to tell me stories all the time about how I would refuse to go to church or school or anything without my Matchbox cars in my hands. And I would really not go. And there was this one Easter in particular where I refused to go in there. But, I was car crazy at a very young age. Some of my first memories are of my dad driving his 80 Firebird around the house. I was probably 1 year old, maybe younger, during Hurricane Bob. He's driving this black Firebird around the back of the house to park it. That's one of my earliest memories. And then I ended up driving that car. That was my first car. My father helped me put that car back together, and I drove it. And that was a real bonding experience for me and my dad. It's like, everyone has like that really great story about how they got into auto. Mine was my dad teaching me how to work on cars.
Well, and that's some of your best memories is with your dad doing that, no doubt.
To this day, we joke because if you go and Google the address of my old house growing up, they have like that freeze frame of Google Earth or whatever it is. My Firebird is still up on ramps. We're pulling the exhaust or we're pulling the transmission or something out of it. And like for the last 12 years, we've noticed every once in a while that picture will update, and it's always some other picture from our neighborhood with my car up on blocks. And my dad and I just spent all the time in the world underneath that car, ripping it apart, putting it back together. It was just awesome.
There's a movie that another one of my guests, I've had Emmy Award-winning videographer Brett Ramker, who produced the full-length feature film called Best in Class, The Making of a Concorde d'Elegance, about the Audrain Concorde d'Elegance. The thing that I love about the movie that reminds me of what you're talking about is everybody has a story about a car, even if they didn't drive. Everybody has a story about, like a New Yorker that never got a license. But there's a story about a car. There's a story about someone's car. There's some memory about a car. And I love this film. I mean, it's on Vimeo. You can rent it. I really recommend. It's great car culture. But the people on the show, a lot of them talk about why they now have this car in the Concours. And it's often because this is the one that my dad and I, or reminds me of the one that my dad and I worked on, or it is the one that my dad and I worked on, and they can't get rid of it because of that. Look, cars are really, the old cars that we like are memories. If you see a Ferrari at a gas station or a Pontiac like that, there's a very good chance you'll be more interested in the Pontiac. It's not all about the price, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's funny. I was driving a friend's car one time. He had this old 1923 T-Bucket Ford. It was all done up. It had a 5.0 engine, nothing spectacular, but a nice setup, nice hot rod. Probably spent about $15,000 for it. Bought it off Facebook Marketplace. And I went and I was driving it to get. I don't forget what I was doing. I was running an errand and I took his car. I pulled up next to a $200,000 Aston Martin. And more people came out of the store I was at to look at the 23 Ford T-Bucket that he bought for $15,000 and the $200,000 Vanquish or whatever it was next to me. It was an unbelievable situation to see. So all the people flocking to a $15,000 car. It'd be like the equivalent of people flocking to go see a 2008 Honda Civic or something like that. It just didn't make any sense.
Well, from a price tag standpoint. But people attach that. I mean, if it's a little kid, they're very, very curious about it. Kids always love the hot rods. I mean, I've had plenty of them.
Oh,
I remember if you want bikes to follow you around the neighborhood, just go idling around in some old hot rod. If it's a car they had when they were young, or it reminds them of something. We're talking about this dune buggy. I know with the dune buggy, which I don't think hits 15 grand. At the gas pump, everybody comes around and has some story. And I remember these at Sleeping Bear Dune in Upper Michigan or out in California. Are you from California? And all like I was really in the dune racing scene, right? Like in the hill climb scene. And speaking of that, it's really a shame. I mean, the inventor of the dune buggy, the original, the Myers-Manx dune buggy, which my yellow one is not, was a fellow named Bruce Myers that was in the surfboard business. That's how he understood fiberglass, and we just lost him. He just passed away in the last few weeks. So that was sad in that culture world. So Dan, remember, the people watching this might be car people, but they are probably people not in the car business that are just enjoying meeting the interesting people that I've met through the car business in my travels that have interesting stories. So we don't have to cater this towards car business or specific car. I mean, of course, unless it's very interesting. But I'm looking at my notes, and you did end up in a dealership one time. Is that interesting enough for the people that aren't in the business?
I hope so. No, I got some stuff to talk about there for sure. It's actually funny. I was talking to a mutual friend of do you know Nick Askew? Have you ever met that kid before? Nice kid, owns a Lumina.
No.
You do? No?
What does he own?
He owns a digital marketing firm that does automotive digital marketing, builds websites, that kind of thing. We were kind of talking last week about our origin stories or how we got into the car business. And I was thinking, I'm wondering if you feel this way as well. I don't think anyone woke up when they were like 5 years old or 10 years old and said, I want to be a spaceman. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be in car sales, retail automotive. I don't think anyone has that story. It's through a series of trials and mistrials and victories and failures that you end up anywhere in life. But certainly in the automotive industry, I've found that to be true. And I was working for a newsletter company in automotive, and I got these questions from the car dealers, and I just couldn't believe that no one had answered these questions. They didn't know, who was in charge of their inventory or why it was important to keep their customers' emails. And I knew I had to be working in a car dealership, so I left the vendor side and promptly applied for a job at Quirk Auto Dealers in beautiful Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
And did you sell cars there, or did you go straight into their marketing department?
That's actually a pretty funny story. So, there's a couple different types of personalities at a car dealership, and I was the marketing kid. The sales guys got one type of treatment, and the marketing people got a separate type of treatment because we're an expense. And the salespeople, they're a revenue driver. They're generating income for the dealerships. I used to kind of come into these meetings and talk about my expertise in marketing. I go into the sales meetings on Monday mornings, and a lot of the general managers who didn't like me, and there was a couple of them, I'm sure, they used to say, well, this kid's telling us how to sell cars. He's never sold cars. The reality is, I've sold my own cars, big deal. Everyone does that. I've also sold a couple Corvettes or helped to sell a couple Corvettes in my lifetime through my previous jobs I spoke about. My dealer principal said to me, Dan, if you want to talk to these guys about selling cars and act like you have expertise, you have to go and sell a car. So at the crack of dawn, 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, that's crack of dawn for us millennials, I put my boots on, strapped my boots on, and I went to our Subaru store and harangued customers in the parking lot until eventually one of them said, okay, fine, I will take a test drive with you. And he was a great guy, and it's actually really funny. We're going to come full circle already in this conversation. We bonded over our mutual desire to drive Trans Ams and live the free life. And he ended up buying a Subaru Forester from me, but he did like Trans Ams, or he at least humored me and pretended to like Trans Ams. But no, I am 1-1 when it comes to selling cars in a retail automotive environment. 1-1.
So I'm just trying to picture this because obviously I sold cars for a short 27 years, and you're building your rapport with your client. You're getting to know each other. That's normal, right? Whether you're looking at a house or looking at furniture or cars or a good waiter. If you get someone good, they're going to find some common ground and get conversational with you, unless you just want to be left alone. And you talk about the things that you have in common. So it might be a hobby, it might be family, it might be where you went to school, it might be a guy that you both know that he's neighbors with that you sold a car, whatever. Somehow you got the conversation to you both like Trans Ams. How did it get there? How do you?
Well, it really helps. It makes it really easy to bring up Trans Ams when that's pretty much all you talk about is Trans Ams, especially back then. No, I have it's pretty clear in this interview, at least I hope, that I have a strange and unusual affinity for these vehicles.
I'm just like trying to picture it. Like, I don't know if he was just trying to humor me that he liked him too.
No.
I like Trans Ams.
Well, let me put some context to it. So,
okay.
So the car, our Subaru lot shared a parking lot with our Kia and Chevrolet stores. And, there was this like 2002 Trans Am, which for me growing up, that was the car. That was the car that everyone who was cool was going to drive. And that was parked. This car was a piece of crap. The guy had beaten the hell out of it, traded it in. It was just sitting in our lot waiting to go to the crusher or auction, but I still found some beauty in that car. And it was sitting next to this Forester that this guy was very excited about. So I was doing what I was told. I was walking around the car, hood and trunk in them, showing him all the great tinsel strength of the hood and how nice the door hinges were and all the stuff I was told to do by I'm assuming Subaru ultimately, but the dealer principal and the general manager there at the time. And we were walking around. I was like, supposed to be showing this Subaru Forester off, but I'm like, eyeballing this black Trans Am next to it, and so that's how that package was opened. But I kind of obsessed over it throughout the entire transaction.
So Dan, one of the cars I drove to school, I'm not a millennial, graduated '83. One of the cars I drove, 77 Trans Am Bandit Edition 455 stick T-top.
Damn.
I was.
Are you testing me, or are you testing me on this one? Because I think you're trying to test me on this one.
I just want to see if you'd appreciate that.
Well, I want to meet the guy who put that 455 in that car that came with a 400. Because that guy's a badass. If that guy was you, even more badass. But that was the car.
You know what? It was either built and had, or not built and had the stickers on the little cowl, or my memory's not working and I'm crossing it with some like 70 Super Duty or something. But
I thought you were throwing me a curveball, man. I wasn't trying to put it
No, not at all. But it was the big block stick, and that went away. So how that worked is I was a year older than a friend of mine that I used to drive to school because he couldn't drive yet. And his father was a dealer and said, listen, would you mind driving some of these cars to school, putting a for sale sign in them because they're for kids. And, so just pick up George at school, park your car, drive the car the rest of the way, put a for sale sign. Car number 1, 69 Chevelle 396, bench seat, no power steering, no power brakes, 4-speed.
Yep, that'll do.
Light blue metallic. I don't remember the seat.
Wait, so this was a job that you had? Was driving sweet cars to high school? That was part of the job.
It turned into that, but it vaporized, and I never sold any. So the 396 Chevelle was the winner of with the most kids I would drive because of what these cars were. I'd probably drive 6 or 8 kids home from school, and it would lay rubber with 6 kids in the back seat longer than any car in history.
That's wonderful.
Next car was we didn't sell that car. The dad sold it himself off the lot or whatever, gives me another one. The 77 Bandit, Trans Am, stick, whatever.
Well, it's a good car.
Don't remember if we sold that one or not, how it went away. The next one is a 70 and a half Z28 split bumper, split front bumper. This was, after the 67, 8, 9 Camaro body, so it wasn't the 302. What would that be, a 350 in a 70?
Yeah, 350. They had a couple different. Yeah, it was the second generation body style, and there was definitely a few quirks there. But yeah, I think the 327 was definitely out by that point in time. I think the 350 would probably have been the starter. Or was it 283 still in that car? I forget now.
No.
So, I don't know.
No, Camaros already had 305s and 327s, and so by 70, whatever it was, small block Chevy. It was also it was black with silver hood stripes and black interior and another stick. But that's when it ended. Before school started, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning or something. I was out doing donuts or fishtailing this thing in the parking lot, trying to get customer interest out in the school parking lot. The school dean called me into his office and woke my father up. I mean, this was before 7 a.m. and said that your boy is doing cattails out in the parking lot. I said I was doing fishtails. Shut up. And by the time I got out of first period, the car had been picked up with a transporter. And that was the end of my career, picking up those cars. Now, my own car wasn't terrible. I mean, my first car that my dad gave me, and I was 13 when he gave it to me, all I could do was wax it and whatever, but I had to have it because we saw it at the Detroit Auto Show and you couldn't buy it later. He just got it and put it aside. Was a 77 Golden Eagle CJ7, Golden Eagle Jeep 304, Levi's interior, automatic, sadly, but quadra-track, and just give it a little bit of RPM, power brake it a little bit, and it would lay rubber all 4 tires however long.
I'm also a very fond place in my heart for Jeeps as well. That's a hell of a Jeep. Yeah, I was going to tell you, I was so happy when Jeep announced late last year or whenever it was about the 392 going into the Wrangler. I just thought, wow, that's just going to be so fucking cool. Can I swear on this? I don't even know if I can swear. Probably not. I didn't mean to. That is so cool.
FCC will be contacting us.
I owe them a call anyways. No, I was so excited when I saw that they were putting that engine in there, and I also learned from some guys I still talk to in automotive that Hellcat motor is also being positioned to go into the Wrangler at some point in 2022 as well, and I'm very excited about that as well.
Very exciting news. Love the Jeeps. I know you love the Jeeps. You mentioned something about many people end up selling cars by accident or in between real jobs. And it could sometimes be 20, 30 years while they're waiting for their real job to come along. And it used to really frustrate me because I thought that was a great career. I sold cars directly for, 4 or 5 years before I became a manager. But I was meeting customers on the floor and finishing up the sale or stopping people at their car and bringing them back in the building the entire time for the whole 27 years. Loved every minute of it. But I actually went into it on purpose and bugged my dad. My dad was an independent dealer in Detroit. So I loved going to work with him, and he had a lot of antiques and hot rods and classics, which of course in the late 70s, that wasn't an expensive trade at all, but had the 38 Oaklands and the Model A's and had the Bonnie and Clyde car and had Superfly Eldorado and had the Corvairs and everything in between, had a real 289 Cobra.
Nice. Really cool.
That he wholesaled for $4,000 to the dealer up the street that I think still has it. But I went into it intentionally. My dad sold his lot to ensure that my little brother and I would become real citizens and not go into the car business. And I loved going to work with him and got, at least 10 car magazines and loved people and thought of it as a real craft. And it aggravated him when I went into it. But I think when he saw that I took it serious, I think it's because he saw too many guys that went into it as a part-time thing or as a smack-off thing that didn't take it seriously, that he wouldn't. And I could, in the hours, I mean, I think I could understand, because I don't necessarily want my kids going into it, which is weird because I loved every minute of it. So I don't, we all want better.
I think everyone should at some point sell cars. I really do. I think that the people who do not have an opportunity to work in the automotive industry are doing themselves an amazing disservice in writing off that career or that profession. It is amazing how much you learn about yourself, how much you learn about business, how much you learn about running an operation, training, management at a car dealership. People. You get a crash course in how to run a business. In fact, I don't believe I could have started either of my two technology businesses or the other two I'm working on today without that experience in automotive. I firmly believe that was a game-changing event for me in my life.
I always said that when kids get out of school, I mean, what they need to do is travel the world for at least a month, if not longer, just see something and sell cars for a year.
I agree.
I mean, I think you learn more about people doing that for a year than maybe some people learn in their whole life.
I would agree with that.
I mean, just tell somebody what their trade's worth if you want to see the different sides of the human condition.
That's funny.
I had a guest on that he'll be released soon named Kevin Hurrigan, who's been recognized as Digital Marketer of the Year and a keynote speaker at Nationwide. I can't think of the venue now. CEO of the Year, been featured on Business Magazine here in Tampa Bay. Good businessman. He just merged with another digital marketing company, and he doesn't know because it's not public, but I think he's number 1, 2, or 3 largest digital marketing company in the United States. He's doing now like $33 million a year or something.
Good for him. That's great.
His dad's not an ex, but growing up with his dad, and his dad's a general manager of a Ford store up in Pennsylvania. And he says that he's carried everything forward from the little bit of time he spent selling cars, either helping his dad or when his dad kicked him out of the house one summer in college, when his dad asked him, what are you going to do for the summer? And he's like, oh, it was a tough semester. I think I'm going to reflect. He's like, yeah, you'll have a job by Friday or I'll get you one. And it was selling Hyundais.
It's unbelievable because, that other industry I mentioned I'm looking at working in right now, cannabis dispensaries. It is amazing the similarities between these two businesses in terms of customer service.
Explain, please.
Okay. Yeah.
The similarities between selling cars and pot dispensaries, please. I
can. There's a couple different really major ones. It is a transaction that can start online but needs to be finished in person. So they have digital retailing tools in automotive that get you so far down the financing and all of that, and then you have to come in and sign. Basically, it's not a fully immersive online experience. Same thing with marijuana. You can buy the products through a menu, but you have to pick them up in person. They have to check out your card and make sure that you're who you say you are in person. So it's a partial transaction online. That's one similarity. Some other similarities are a lot of these first-time business owners in the dispensary land are heavily reliant on third-party listing sites. In automotive, we call those sites things like Cars.com, Car Gurus, Auto Trader. And in cannabis, we call it Leafly.com. We call it Weed Maps. We call it Pot Guide. And it's essentially the same business model where they offer services. Their prices adjust based on proximity to whatever. But they're basically both trying to commoditize. I don't like this. Screw this one. I don't want to do this one. I can't do it without sounding super negative on one industry, and I don't want to do that. So.
Okay, but thank God it's not a live stream.
Yeah, thank God. Well, I figured a way to recover, but no, I mean, let's just skip it. Sorry.
I can tell you a similarity between the car business and the cannabis.
Okay,
business.
Go for it.
Both salespeople want you to smell it.
That's funny. That's good. Yeah. The only difference that really sucks about them is that one you can test drive before buying, and the other you cannot. That's the biggest disappointment in cannabis.
They don't have this at the dispensary where they're like they got a bong in the corner and say go try.
I mean, they
this
have
one.
a bong in the corner, but it has a price tag on it, and if you touch it, I'm pretty sure you bought it. So maybe it is kind of like the car business. If you touch it, you bought it.
You hope so. Looking at my notes, your background is marketing. And I hope this is interesting, or, we'll end up with like 12 minutes. That's okay. So big differences marketing like 2010 to 2020-ish, like in a decade, what happened? Is there anything that happened?
It's funny. Not really. I had a little bit of a sabbatical from automotive digital marketing. I know you and I have spoken about this before. I remember back in 2010, I used to be mesmerized by how you could Google, Grand Cherokee lease and be met with ads that had nothing about leasing, no prices, nothing. And it's amazing to me that even today you can still do that and still not know what the car costs up front. It's miraculous. I'm located within earshot of a pretty significant sized auto group in Massachusetts. And I was showing a friend of mine an example on a Google search. And I was showing him what happens when you Google Chevy dealer near me. And I was getting ads from the local dealership for used Silverados during the celebration event, which made absolutely zero sense. I didn't understand what we were celebrating. I didn't understand why a used Silverado had much to do with a Chevy dealership near me. But it really hasn't changed that much, which is why I'm definitely taking a good hard look at it and thinking to myself, maybe I need to come back in here and play some more.
Save the car industry.
Well, I don't think that needs saving. I'm certainly not the one to do it, but I can try to help.
I can't help. I don't know. I can't say speaking of that.
Yeah, what do you got?
But I was thinking about a funny car business story that I actually told my wife on a walk the other day. We were walking the baby. I buy my ex-wife, when we're either engaged or just married, an E30 BMW Convertible, so mid-late 80s. To me, that was the poster car. I loved it. It came in on trade. I do all of the used car lot recon stuff. I get the dent removal and the touch up and new tires and tune up and get the leather done. And I don't know if I put a new top on it or fix the I recon the car, made it new. I loved it. It was dark green. I probably would have liked a different color, but I just loved the car. So I surprised my ex and I bring it home and what do you think? And first thing out of her mouth is, isn't there a newer body? Should have been a sign. I really love my kids. I wouldn't trade them for anything, so I wouldn't want to undo that, but that should have been a hint.
Oh, my goodness.
But she didn't like it, so you don't like it. I'm into old, cool cars. You might be into old, cool cars, and sometimes the women, they don't care about that. They could be the reliability factor. So I put it back on the lot. I'm working at a dealership, and they let us once or twice a year sell our own car through the dealership or whatever it was. Put it on the property to sell, to run it through the store, and someone tells me there's someone looking at the car, and there's an absolute gorgeous, gorgeous girl looking at the car. It turns out that she's a stripper at the Dollhouse in Tampa, and I can still almost picture, not quite, it's a little fuzzy, but just a notable, good-looking girl. So she says, I'll take it, and gives me a deposit, and that's the
Was it a cash deposit?
It was lots of cash. This was like $1,000. I think it was like this tall. And but this is very funny. So she's going to pick it up day after tomorrow. We get her loan approved, all of that stuff.
Sure.
So she shows up with a well-dressed, slightly older than her guy.
Okay.
Good-looking guy, sharp-looking guy, and introduces me, as she's here to pick up the car, to the guy as her friend who's more savvy in business. Since she's doing a loan, she wants him just to look at everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just somebody to look at everything. I don't know what I'm doing.
An advisor, it sounds like. She brought her advisor friend in.
She brought her advisor. So I give them to our finance manager. I, of course, don't go in. They're doing their thing. I'm waiting to hear the printer going, that their loan's done and signing everything. The sound that all of us salespeople wait for.
Yep.
And they're in there for a while. Finally, they're done. She comes out. I give her the key. There's not like a big handover. There's not like a survey. It's just running a car through the store. It's not the store's deal. Give her the key, put a tag on it. She leaves. I asked the finance guy, what took so long? Did she buy a warranty or, asking about all the products or the advice? She goes, no. She asked me how much it took to get her payment to X, let's just say 300. And I told her $11,000. And she looked at the guy and said, write the check. The guy was completely blindsided, had no idea he was in on any of it, and wrote the check. They had a little bit of a spat during. He's like, what? But I found that so interesting. Guy comes in to check the paperwork, leaves writing an $11,000 check to get her to her payment.
Where do I get one of these advisors who comes to help me buy cars?
Well, I'd say you're good looking enough.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Let's talk about what's an NOEM website.
Oh, yeah. So when I was at the car dealership, we used to have a lot of fun. We had some pretty nifty things we were trying. So NOEM stands for not OEM. So.
And OEM, by the way, if you're not in the car business, original equipment manufacturer, we call the factories the OEM. Okay.
So there's a very popular website that's out to this day called ChooseNissan.com. They've sponsored the NBA. They're a major advertiser on everything. And they're always trying to send their, and you can explain this one as well to your audience, tier 2 traffic is going through ChooseNissan.com. That's where they do all their regional offers. That's where all their regional leasing programs come through. ChooseNissan.com.
Wait a minute. What does tier 2 mean if you're not in the business?
Teeing that up for you, man.
Oh, thank you. So tier 1 is the manufacturer running a national ad. Tier 2 is when they run it in your area and they say, brought to you by your Southern truck dealers, and they tag it with a half a dozen dealerships or whatever. That would be tier 2. Tier 3 is in the dealership that corresponds with what's going on nationally or regionally from the manufacturer. Please continue,
Thank you,
Dan.
Jeff. That was great definitions you put there. Yeah, so they had this ChooseNissan.com website. It was all over all the NBA games, and they were spending a ton of money promoting it. And, we went on GoDaddy one day, and the team and I found that ChoseNissan.com was available. And so we felt obligated to purchase said domain. And then we took on this project. We weren't really sure where it was going to go, but we decided we were going to replicate Nissan's website. And we built a website that looked almost identical to it. The only difference were that all of the offers were offers native to my dealership. And all of the leads went to my dealership, were not round robined or distributed evenly based on the closest proximity dealer. So we basically cloned ChooseNissan.com and then ran aggressive advertising strategies to make it outperform ChooseNissan.com. And we got away with this for, I don't know, it had to have been months, 3-4 months before Nissan corporate came into the dealership and was not too pleased with it. They were saying things like violation of dealer agreement. You can't do this. And I got brought into this meeting, and I was asked all these questions like, why are you doing this? How can this be legal? And we're like, well, I read the dealer bylaws in your dealer agreement with us, and there's nothing that says we can't take a trademark that you agree we represent and can use and advertise with it. There's nothing that says we have to advertise exclusively on our website. In fact, there's actually some laws in there that say you can build other websites as long as they meet Nissan compliance. I think a website that's the exact same as Nissan will probably meet Nissan compliance. So, long story short, Nissan came back. This was right around the time that the new Rogue body style was coming out. I think it's like end of 2013. We're having this conversation. Nissan made my owner an offer to buy the website, and he was able to work into that negotiation an improved allocation of these new Rogues that no one could get. So I think he ended up getting and don't quote me, 200 more Rogues than he was originally promised in a very short window of time. And I'm pretty sure there was some cash available to us as well in the form of co-op, which is the money the factory spits you back as a car dealership to invest in different advertising methods. That was for your viewers.
Well, thank you, Dan. Let's go a little deeper into co-op. So how co-op works is every time a dealer buys a new car from the factory, on the invoice is some amount that's being withheld, and it could either be a percentage or a dollar amount, $300 a car, 1% a car, whatever it is, for advertising. And in order for the dealer to get that money, they need to prove that they spent it in an approved or suggested manner. So it could be website marketing, it could be an event, it could be a magazine ad, it could be whatever. Excuse me. And then the manufacturer often splits it with them or gives them all of it, depending. So they say, like, for instance, I was in one situation where there was about $160,000 at stake, but I had to spend double that, so they were giving me half back. So it's the manufacturer giving you money that's bounced off of the per car that goes against the receipts for your advertising or marketing spend.
That was a much more elegant way of describing it.
Instead of money that the factory spits at you for spending.
Well, I'm not sure how scientific we're trying to get here. Yeah. And in addition to what Jeff has said to you, just to smarten myself up as well, the OEM, the factory, also gives you a recommendation list of different vendors and different marketing programs that you can enroll in to help you navigate the very murky waters that is advertising your car dealership. The factory knows that there's a lot of value to having a unique face and a unique brand, but they also want to provide guidance and some rails up so you can make informed decisions with technologies and marketing companies that they know work because they've tried them and they've vetted them out themselves. So.
Beautiful. So what Dan did is he had a lookalike site. So your dealer, I'm sure, said, Dan, we got the couple hundred extra rogues. We got a big price for that site. Here's your 10% of all that, I'm sure.
Oh, he was very generous with me.
Excellent. Well put.
Yeah, he was it was a great experience. He was a great owner. He was a great dealer principal. He treated me very, very well. And, that's really how it went there. Yeah.
Dan, the way you're putting that sounds very much like a guy that might consider getting back in the automotive space.
No, like I said, I'm looking at it with very hungry eyes. It's my first love, and I definitely am thinking about it very, 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 very cautiously, very optimistically, though. So,
well, I can tell you that the car space misses you.
Well, that's very kind. Yeah, I miss you, and I miss hanging out with all you great guys at the conferences, and I used to love when you came to town, Jeff. We always had the best meals, we had the best conversation. I always wondered why I was the only one drinking, but you've cleared that up for me as well tonight, and I appreciate it.
You thought it was a Schindler's List thing where I was just letting you get drunk while I was taking shots of water.
I was just curious to figure out what alley I'd wake up in the morning or not wake up in the morning.
Right, missing a kidney.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Oh, my God, that's funny. So, Dan, come on, Dish. When we've had our dinners, when we've had our conversations, I've heard a little bit about your, I don't want to say misguided, but your mischievous childhood as it relates to cars or young manhood. So now's the time, unless you're worried about a statute of limitations isn't run out, the cops will come after you or some relative being mad at you.
Oh, man, I can do all of the above in like one story, I bet. This is my absolute favorite one. This was in my second Trans Am. I was in college. I was working at the Corvette shop. And I had a friend who's a real delinquent just like me named Ricky. He was one of the mechanics there. And we had just finished putting my car back together. We had done a cam and some bolt-on mods to the car. Didn't have a plate. The car was not insured, but I was in a repair shop. So I borrowed my boss Ron's plate. It was around probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm right outside of the college campus, and the college police, I was already on a first name basis with them by this point. So I had no reservation about just driving right down Main Street in the car at 3 o'clock in the morning, no exhaust on it, just shooting flames out the sides of it. And we went for a high-speed test, which I'm sure you know all about those. It's when you go on one of the straightest roads you can find and just see how fast you can go. So I got up to about 110 before I saw blue and red lights behind me. And like an idiot, I don't mean like an idiot, like a responsible human person, I pulled over. I wasn't going to get away with it. I have been making a lot of mistakes that night, so I figured I should pay the piper. I got pulled over, and they're throwing the book at me. They're pissed. They pulled me out of the car. They pulled my friend out of the car, which I'd never seen that before. They pulled us both out of the car. They're interrogating us separately, and then finally, one of the officers comes up to me and he just says, all right, so where does this plate come from? We're looking at this plate. We're running this plate, and it comes back to an auto restoration. Did you guys steal this car from a dealership? I go, no. We're employees of that dealership. And the guy just goes, bullshit. Just pissed off, spitting in my face. He's furious. And I go, no, this is my boss's plate. He goes, there's no way you're that stupid, Mondello, to have pulled a plate off of one of your boss's cars and then driven it fast down the middle of the college campus. There's no way that happens. So he calls my boss and he goes, all right, so, Mr. Bunnell, yeah, this is Agent Murphy from Fitchburg State Police Unit or whatever it was. Do you know a Dan Mondello? And I can hear my boss in the background go, no. And the phone goes quiet. So that was one of the nights that I spent in solitary confinement thinking about my mistakes. But ultimately, I didn't go to jail, so I would call it a win.
How did you reconcile that in the long term? Like, because you're obviously your boss had to say he was your boss.
So, I wake up. You don't sleep when you're in. No, I wasn't incarcerated. I think I was in protective custody. They didn't actually arrest me. I don't think I was just in protective custody. But you don't sleep well in these kinds of environments. So I remember when they finally gave me back my possessions, my phone. I texted my boss and I said the only thing I could think to say, which is, "Do I still have a job?" And a couple hours later, he said, "That depends. How soon you're going to be in here?" And I said, "I'll be in there as soon as classes were over." He already knew I wasn't going to classes on Friday. So I show up around 2:00 and he has like the entire like company just like sitting there ready to make fun of me, like ready to laugh in my face. And, they've made fun of me ever since for pulling over. I was the guy who pulled over going 110, not the guy who just kept going and then hit or like crashed or something, which again, I think was the responsible thing to do.
Dan, I want to give you kudos now, so it never has to be questioned, that it was a very responsible thing for you to do, and I'm very proud of you.
Yes, thank you.
That reminds me of that Jeep. So my dad used to let me go to the 7-Eleven for a gallon of milk or something, or to fill the car up, which was, I could always drive around our subdivision when I was like 13, 14.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think at 14, he let me go to the 7-Eleven, but that is just the entrance of the sub and then a couple 100 feet across a 2-lane to the entrance of the parking lot of the 7-Eleven.
It's pretty nice.
So he let me do that.
That's pretty cool.
He let me do that. And I'm needing to turn left into the driveway, so cross the road of the 7-Eleven, and I overshoot it. I just get nervous. I overshoot the driveway. I try to make a little bit of a U-turnish move to get back into the driveway. I can't make it back. I end up driving through a ditch, and I was just thinking, yeah, it's a Jeep. And when I'm down through the ditch, I gun it and I leave. I like either the front tires or all four tires. I jump out of the ditch into the parking lot, scare myself to death, drive to the parking spot at the front of the 7-Eleven, throw it in park, and go in for the whatever, milk. Now when I'm going to the checkout, there's 2 police cars parked behind the Jeep in my parking spot. I'm 14. There's no cell phones. I mean, this
what you do.
This is early 80s, 80-ish, whatever. I waited in there about an hour and a half.
Smart.
Don't come out. Finally, I come out, but of course, they're not going to know who the driver is. And I go to the payphone on the side of the building, on the outside of the building. And I call my house, and I'm going to have someone come pick me up and just leave the Jeep like no one drove it there. Mm-hmm. And dude, the cops were behind the Jeep like 22 seconds after I parked. I mean, they witnessed it or something. One of them did. So I call the house, and my dad had a girlfriend and a son that lived with us. So sort of a stepmom, Michelle, love her. She answers the phone, and I'm like, she goes, "Where are you?" She says, "I'm at the 7-Eleven. She goes, "For what?" I said, "To get the milk." She goes, "That was like an hour and a half ago." She says, "Are you driving the Jeep?" I says, "Yeah." She goes, "The cops already," my dad was general manager at a golf club in our subdivision. "The cops already called your dad. They already know it's your Jeep." So everybody's waiting. You might as well come out.
Well, they do when you came out.
So I explained, told them I overshot it, told them I didn't know what I was doing. And they let me, what a different era. They let me drive it home.
No.
He goes, just go home. Just, your dad knows, you're already in enough trouble.
Did they follow you at least? Or they just like said, okay.
They followed me for me to cross the 2-lane into the sub, and then that was it.
So they're just like, okay, little boy who should not be driving a Jeep and just jumped in, go home, see ya?
Kinda. I mean, I was in major shit with my dad. I mean, I think they just kind of knew I was in major trouble. Like, what else were they going to do? I mean, like, really, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say, oh God, my dad was wrath of Khan. Once he started yelling,
say no more.
I wish my dad would hit us. My dad never touched us, but when he would yell for 3 hours and the language would come and the screaming and the spit flying and the going horse and I mean, he would do it in easily an hour past when you're already pissed down your leg. Anyway, one of those deals, and I'm sure that I lost privileges to drive the thing for a couple of weeks. But I remember he had a 73 Vet with like no miles, like 60,000 miles on the thing, just a nice original car, red. Because that was like the Ferris Bueller Ferrari. This was like the car nobody touched. The blanket you couldn't eat in the garage, one of these things.
He just wipes it with a diaper. That's all he does.
Yeah, yes. Matter of fact, my dad, and look, I never felt like my dad loved the cars more than us. My dad was a phenomenal father. No question about it, but he loved these cars. But I will say that he left on it to go on a date in that 73 Vet. And my brother and I, who were probably, and the girl living with us is gone, So we're like 16 and 13. We're playing Frisbee out front or playing with the dog. And he's like, okay, I'm going on a date. And we're like, have fun. And he was back in a half hour in that car and alone. And we asked him what happened. Now, if you could picture a 73 Vet like that Stingray body, they had the door handle you push down on the top, that little thing. Okay. And the keyhole on the side of the door.
Good old GM keyhole.
He said, you know how you're supposed to shut the door with the keyhole, not the window, not the paint. He goes, as soon as I met the girl, I told her how to shut the door. So, Dan, I want to thank you for making the time. I know you're a serial entrepreneur. I know you're working on a number of things. I know you're in between projects and you can't disclose what's next, but you still took your time to support and participate in this show, this project. So I'm really honored to have you
Jeff, you're one of my favorites. We go way, 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 way back. And I was delighted when I got the invitation to be on your show. So thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. And by the way, as a sidebar, if you want to say that when you were a dealer, that Car Chat 24 was the best vendor you ever dealt with, feel free.
When I was a dealer twice, Car Chat 24 was our number one choice. And also I've spoken to many dealers since and told them just how great the product is of Car Chat 24. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out.
So if the podcast is no good, at least I got an endorsement for my job.
You definitely got an endorsement for your job. That's absolutely what just happened.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.